Hey, what's going on everyone? Long time no see, hope you're all doing well. In today's crash course, we're going to dive into the Lua scripting programming language. And Lua is a simple yet powerful scripting language which is heavily used in game development and super fun to work with. And if you're new to the channel, thank you so much for tuning in. Please feel free to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like at the end of it if you have liked it, and share it with all of your friends if you feel like doing so. Alright, with that being said, let's roll up our sleeves and get started with our Lua programming language crash course. Alright then, so let me tell you before we get started that this crash course is going to cover everything from the fundamentals of Lua to more advanced concepts. And by the end, you will be comfortable programming with Lua and applying it effectively in real-world scenarios. Alright, so first of all, what is Lua? Lua is an open source scripting language built on top of the C programming language. It's specially designed for embedded systems and is known for its dynamic typing, clean minimal syntax, as you're going to see in a few minutes, and efficient memory management. Also, Lua is very versatile. I mean, you're going to find it used in everything from large-scale server systems to lightweight mobile apps. Fun fact, the word Lua means moon in Portuguese, and it's always written Lua with a capital L-U-A and not Lua all capitalized. That's just to avoid confusion, as Lua capitalized might be interpreted differently. Now let's go to the second question. Why choose Lua? Well, Lua is a free open source language, popular especially in the world of game development. And here's why I think it stands out. First of all, it has simple syntax, which makes it very beginner friendly. So I think even if Lua is going to be your first programming language, you're going to be fine watching this crash course. The syntax is very simple, very beginner friendly, very minimal, and you don't have complications like curly braces and, things like semicolons like in JavaScript or Java or Rust. Also, it's dynamically typed, so no need for explicit type declarations. But what about performance? It has fast performance, even on limited hardware. And finally, it's portable, which means that it can run on anything with a standard C compiler, embedded systems, mobile devices, and desktop alike. By the way, before we jump to the jobs and opportunities point, I want to tell you that Lua size-wise is very, very small. So if we're going to compare Lua with something like Python, for instance, Lua has a compressed source tarball. It's 365 kilobytes, while the Python compressed source tarball is 20 megabytes. When Lua is uncompressed, it's 1.3 megabytes only. Python uncompressed is 100 megabytes. All in all, the language itself, when you're going to install it on your machine, it has 31,000 lines of code only, which is mainly C. Lua is built on top of ANSI C. When you download and install Python on your machine, it has 600,000 lines of code. It's a mix of C, Python, and Python. So yeah, the total runtime size, for instance, for Lua is 743 kilobytes, while the total runtime size for Python is 130 megabytes. And as a conclusion, I can tell you with the utmost confidence that Lua is really tiny. The full Lua runtime is smaller than a single Python binary. Adding Lua to your application barely increases its size, making it perfect for embedded systems or something like security focused tools. All right, it's not only working, or it's not only used in game development. And for those of you who don't know what a runtime is, the runtime basically is everything needed for a program to run. So not just the code itself. When you talk about Lua's runtime size or any other language runtime size, we mean three main things. First of all, the interpreter for Python, or for Lua for that matter, because Lua and Python, they really alike. For instance, they have interpreter. I think you saw me opening the interpreter here. That's exactly like in Python, right? You can do math, right? You can print things, hello, right? That's the interpreter of Lua. That's exactly the same like in Python. The second thing is the standard libraries, the built-in libraries, okay? Things like the math library, the OS library, the string library, you know, those built-in functions and modules, those built-in libraries. And finally, any dependencies required to execute your script. Okay, so any third-party library that you're going to install and import to your code to run your application or program, right? I know there are a lot of buzzwords that you can repeat, but you don't know what it is. One of them being runtime. So I hope if you didn't know before, you know now what runtime means. All right, let's move to jobs and opportunities. Well, let me tell you that Lua alone may not land you a job. I know it's a bummer, but it's a valuable asset if you're aiming for roles like game developer, right? Embedded systems developer as well, gameplay programmer. And speaking of gameplay programmer and game developer, we will move on or we'll jump to the next point, which is Lua in game development. Lua is widely used for scripting in video games. And why is that? That's due to how easily it integrates and deploys in engines. So you might have heard of World of Warcraft. This is among the popular titles that utilizes Lua. Also Angry Birds. Angry Birds is programmed in Lua programming language. So what about the prerequisites to learn Lua? Well, let me tell you that there aren't many strict requirements to get started with Lua. However, having some understanding of basic programming concepts in any programming language would be very useful. And finally, and before we install Lua, let me tell you who should learn Lua. This course is made for everyone, from total beginners to professional developers who don't know Lua, obviously, who are looking to add Lua to their skill set. So whether you're diving into game scripting, which was the main reason why I created this crash course in the first place, or just curious about a lightweight language. So yeah, if you're interested or curious about this lightweight language, I think you're in the right place. Right. So I will assume that you're going to use Microsoft Windows, as the majority of you guys here work on Microsoft Windows, so we're going to install that very, very easily. Obviously, you can go to, that's the website, right? lua.org/home.html. You're going to find about, news, get started, and download. Okay, so that's the Lua, that's the version. The latest version of Lua is 5.4.7, but 5.3 is stable as well. So we are interested in the latest one. That's the current release. Okay. Tells you here that Lua is implemented in pure ANSI C. There you go. And compiles unmodified in all platforms that have an ANSI C compiler. Lua also compiles cleanly as C++. It's very easy to build and install. There are detailed instructions in the package, but there's simple terminal session that downloads the current release of Lua and builds it in Linux. So obviously, if you're running on Linux, you're going to take that curl, copy paste, and that's it. Then you're going to tar the file, and you're going to cd to Lua and make all test. Okay, later you're going to do Lua. Even there's simpler than that. If you're running on Debian, any Debian-based system, you would do sudo apt install Lua, Lua 5.3, 5.4, whatever the version that you want, and it's going to install no problem. For Microsoft Windows, let me show you, my friend, the easiest way to install it on your machine. I'm going to leave the link in the description below. So we're going to use winget. So for Windows, there are a lot of package managers like winget, Chocolatey, Scoop. You can use any of those. We're going to use winget. Okay, let me just click on the link. And what you're going to do is that you're going to copy that winget install --id equal to devcom.lua flag e. Okay, you're going to copy this. You're going to go to your terminal and let me just exit. And we're going to paste that in and you're going to hit enter. And as I have it already, found an existing package already installed, trying to upgrade the installed package, no available upgrade found because I have the latest version. And to make sure that Lua is properly installed on your machine, first I recommend you shut the terminal and reopen it again just to refresh the terminal memory. And if you would do Lua, you will open the interpreter as I showed you before. Right? You can write your functions, you can try your code, play with the syntax. That's the interpreter like you would do in Windows, like you would do in Python, sorry. Also in Node.js, right? You would type Node and, try on the code. So that's the same idea. We're not going to play with that much. Instead, I'm going to open Visual Studio Code now, and we're going to work on our crash course. Let me show you. So that's the end of the introduction, by the way, if you're wondering, because I'm not going to, cut the crash course. I will try to do that in one go. So there you go. We have in this course, we have the basic syntax, variables and data types, arithmetic in game logic, control flow conditions, the loops. Then we have the functions, first class functions, tables, strings, and some advanced bits, but still very beginner friendly. Don't worry. All right, so that's the first chapter, which is going to be the basic syntax. Okay, and we're going to start with hello world, obviously. So let's print something on the screen. If you want to print something on your console, simply we will use a function called print, exactly like you would do in Python. And in parentheses and double quotes like that, you would type whatever you want. So we can say, welcome to Pixel Hero, for instance. And to run any Lua file, you will start by the keyword Lua, right? The name of the language itself. Following that, the name of the file. So the name of the file is main.lua. You will hit enter, see welcome to Pixel Hero printed on the screen. Now let's talk about variables and data types. I told you that Lua is dynamically typed programming language. So it's more like Python. So if you want to declare a variable, for instance, let's have a player name, for example. Like that, you have declared that variable. You want to give it a value. So I'm going to give the value of night. That's a string, all right? This is a string data type. And that's of course a comment. I forgot to mention that. So comments are very useful, of course, as you may or may not know, in writing, comments for yourself, what that code does, what that code line does, or what that code block does exactly. Not only useful for you, but if you're working in a team, so the team members can understand what you have written exactly and what's the purpose of this code line or code block. So comments in Lua are written just with the double hyphen like that. This is a one-line comment. And to write multi-line comment or double line or more, you can use the double square brackets like so. All right. So this is a multi-line comment. Thank you. All right. And of course, the interpreter is not going to take that into effect. It's going to escape that. For those of you who don't know, that's just a comment that's going to be ignored by the interpreter. Also, we have number data type. So let's give health of 100, for instance. Okay. And this is a number data type. Also, we have Boolean values. Booleans are true or false. Is this true or is this false? So to give you a practical example, we can have a variable called is alive. Your hero, your protagonist of the game is alive. And we can give that a value of true. Also, you can do like this, is that's also equal to false. So we have true and false. Also, we have nil. Nil if, for example, the player hasn't picked a weapon yet. We can have weapon set to nil. Okay? Here the player has not chosen the weapon yet. So for Python, you have none if something is not assigned yet. In JavaScript, we have null and undefined. Okay, depends on the context, of course. So that's not a new concept. It's not unique to Lua. Yeah. And let's go ahead and print everything. Okay, let's say here player. And that's going to be the placeholder. The placeholder here, we have our player name. And we have the health. And the health here substituted by this variable that we have assigned to it 100, which is a full number. Also, we have alive, right, which is set to true. And let's try out our file, lua main.lua. And there we go. Player knight, health 100, alive is true. All right, let's talk about arithmetic logic. So arithmetic logic in Lua, like in any other programming language, as I showed you in the interpreter, what you can do is that you can do any basic arithmetic operations. So you can do obviously addition, you can do subtraction, multiplication, and of course you can do division. So let's say that we have a variable called coins and we have actually 10 coins in our game and we have found a treasure chest. So our coins have increased by 5. So coins is equal to coins plus 5, right? So now we're supposed to have 15 coins. Also, let's say that health is equal to the original health minus 25. Also, let's have a variable called base damage, and that's going to be equal to number 8. And let's have the multiplier, I'm going to call it crit multiplier, I'm going to set it to number 2. So the total damage in this case is going to be equal to the base damage multiplied by the multiplier. Now let's print the coins. Let's also print the health after hit. Let's also print the critical hit damage. That's gonna be the total damage here. And that's basically everything. Now, take a look to this code and try to spot the error here. So you have coins equals to 10 and you're overwriting coins when you find a new chest. But you have health, which is not defined already. You assumed that health is defined, but it's not. And if you're going to leave it like that, you're going to leave Lua to assume health to be nil. And you cannot do any mathematical or arithmetic operations with nil. So you need to have this global. So we will need to define health first. Okay. And you can actually define variables like that. You can do health is equal to, let's say, 100. And that's going to be a global variable. Global variable here means that it's accessible in any code block within your code. All right, contrary to local keyword. So if you want this coins variable to be only accessible in this code block, you would do here local coins. So again, you have local keyword, which makes that variable accessible only in this code block. And you have a global variable, which can allow this variable to be accessible anywhere else in your code. All right, let's go ahead and try that out. And there we go. Coins equals to 15, health after hit 75, and critical hit damage 16. And that's pretty much wraps it up, guys. This is how you can do basic arithmetic operations in Lua. Now let's talk about if conditions. This is the control flow in Lua programming language. In control flow in general, in any programming language on the planet, you have if statements and you have the loops. Both of them are, constituting the concept of control flow in a programming language. Okay, so let's go ahead and start directly by a practical example. Again, let's have a variable called score, and I'm gonna give it a value of 1200. Now I want to compare my current score with the threshold. The threshold here is going to be 1000. So if my score is more than or equal to 1000, that means that I've unlocked the next level, right? So how to do that? Well, like in any programming language, we will start by the if condition. If score, which is our variable, is more than or equal to 1000, if that's the case, then, and yeah, you got it right, this is a keyword, a main keyword in the if statements in Lua. Okay, so so it's pretty much like normal English, right? If score is more than or equal to 1000, then what you want me to do, and notice the automatic indentation here, that's made by Lua. Okay, you don't need to change that. And what we want to do in this case, we would say you unlock the next level. Don't forget a very important keyword in that if statement code block, which is end. You see that Lua is not really attached to that curly braces code blocks, separation of code blocks using curly braces and semicolons and all of that. It's much, much simpler in Lua. And the health, I'm going to initialize it to 5. And I want to check out if the health, the same exact concept, guys. So if health is less than or equal to 0, then we would print game over. All right, and let's go ahead and try that out. And we have here, you unlocked the next level. Why? Because this condition was true. My score is more than 1000, basically, it's 1200. And that's why the next line was executed, print you unlocked the next level. However, nothing about health really. Why? Simply because my health is 5. So it's not less than or equal to 0. But what if I will change that to 0? In that case, I'm going to have game over printed to the console. All right, I'm trying to be super beginner friendly, maybe too much. I know that's not my usual pace, guys. So yeah, I appreciate your patience if you're experienced programmer. But I'm trying to make this mini crash course an introduction or an entry point for anyone else who's interested in programming and specifically the 2D games programming. Let's have also a variable. I'm gonna call it ASCII. And ASCII, I'm gonna set it to a Boolean value. If you remember, Boolean values are either true or false. So I'm gonna set that to true. And also at door, I'm gonna set that to false. And I will print here can open door. That's, for instance, if we're trying to make a text adventure game, this is going to be very helpful. So I'm gonna pass here hasKey and at door. And let's see what we will get. Can open door, false. Why? Because I have here and. So there is or and that's called logical operations. Okay, so let's try here or, for instance. Now that's true. So true and false renders us false, but true or false renders us true. Okay, so true and false, false, true or false, that's going to be true. Okay, so that's a falsy statement and that's truthy statement. So far we have seen only if, but what if we have more than one condition that we want to test in the same code block? Let's have a variable called xp, for instance, and I'm going to give it a value of 350. And I want to check out if xp is more than or equal to 500. Then in this case, I want to print out level master. And I can have more than one condition, more than a probability of having the xp to be more than or equal to 500. So what if the xp is more than or equal to 300 only? In that case, be careful. You need to be underneath the if here. In that case, you would do else if. Now listen, this is very similar to a lot of programming languages, basically all of the programming languages, I can say, that I know of at least. So you have in Python, elif, you have in JavaScript, else if, all right? So that's the same exact concept. Else if followed that the condition itself, which is the xp is more than or equal to 300 in this case. Then, and notice the indentation came underneath the print or under the print. I'm going to print here a different statement, and the level in this case is going to be warrior level. I can go on and on and on, else if xp is more than or equal to 200, or let's make it 100. Then in that case, I can print, I can say here rookie. And anything else, that's not going to be else if. That's going to be called a plug. Anything else that is not equal to or more than 500, 300, or 100. Okay? So that's not going to be else if, instead it's going to be else only. And be careful, E is not capitalized. Not in the else, not in the else if. Okay? Else, I'm going to print unknown. All right, and don't forget, of course, the ending block using and keyword. So what do we expect? We have here xp equal to 350. So if it's equal to or more than 500, that's a master. No, that's not the case. Okay, next. If it's equal to or more than 300, then level warrior. So that meets the conditions just fine. Okay, so we expect to have a warrior level in the result. And there you go. Level is warrior. So let's change that. Let's change that to 50, for instance. We should get unknown. If we would do 100, we should get rookie level. So the output changes according to the input. Okay, this is the simple idea of if statements in programming in general. Alright, now let's talk about loops in Lua. A loop in programming is something that you want to repeat, whether definitely or indefinitely, depends on your purpose. And in many programming languages, the keywords for looping are the same. So let me start by the first loop, which is called while loop. While loop means that while something is true, I want you to do this thing. I want you to repeat this thing. So let's say that we have an enemy wave in video game, Callisto Protocol or Days Gone, any video game, you have an enemy wave. Initially, that's equal to 1. So I'm going to ask my program to do something while this wave is less than or equal to 3. While the wave is less than or equal to 3, so that means that first wave, second wave, and third wave, I want to do so while a certain condition, do this and this and this, okay? So while wave is equal to or less than or equal to 3, I want you to print, let's say here, spawning enemy wave. So again, while a certain condition is met, I want you to print this statement, spawning enemy wave, and I'm going to just plug the wave, whatever the wave number is now. But that's not it, because a main condition in any loop is the increment or the decrement. So I want to increment the initial wave number by 1, for example. So you're going to take the wave and increment it by 1. All right, and don't forget the end keyword. So what we're going to do here is that while the wave is equal to or less than 3, I want you to spawn the enemy wave by taking the wave and increment it by 1. So the first loop, you're going to add 1. The second loop, another 1. And the third loop, another 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and check out what we will have. And there you go. Spawning enemy wave. So it started with 1, then 2, then 3. So what if I will do 4, for instance? That's going to be 4. 4 different loops. So what if I will do 100, for instance? Wow, it has looped over 100 very, very fast. Of course, I didn't test, the speed of the looping, but yeah, as you can see, it has looped over 100 times, 100 enemy waves. All right, so that's the first looping mechanism in Lua. The second looping mechanism is what we call for loop. I want here to render game tiles, for example. So to do a for loop in Lua, that's very, very simple to do. I'm going to take an example of a tile and pixel, as we're talking about 2D video games, or, if we are doing level design, for instance, in any video game. So you have here a tile. A tile simply is a small square or rectangular unit used to build a map or a level. So you can think of it like a Lego piece in a grid. And the common size is 16 by 16 or 32 by 32 or 64 by 64 pixels per tile. A pixel, however, is the smallest unit of a digital image. Okay, so that's the tiny dot on your screen. Okay, so I just wanted to explain to you the difference between a tile and a pixel. So a tile actually is formed of pixels. All right, so let's say that I want to loop over tiles from 1 to 5. We have 5 different tiles. So I'm going to say for tile equal to 1, comma, 5. That means that I want to loop over from 1 to 5. So 5 different loops, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those 5 loops in each tile, I want to print something. I want to print the tile itself multiplied by 32 to get the total number of pixels. So I'm gonna say for tile is equal to 1 to 5. You can think of it as steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. For tile equal to 1, 5, do the following. What I want to do, I want to print here drawing tile at x is equal to x like that is equal to, I'm going to pass the tile depending on the loop number. So first loop, second loop, third loop, and so on, multiplied by 32 pixels. Okay. Don't forget to end that. And let's run this. So we have here an error. Unexpected symbol near 240. I think, yeah. Like that. Right, let's run that again. And there we go. Drawing tile at x equal to 32 pixels, 64, 96, 128, and 160. And even I can make it nicer for you. So we can make like this tile. And that's going simply to show you on each iteration what number of pixels we have. That's pretty obvious, of course, because we have only 5 steps. But if we have more than that, that's just for better visual representation. So let's try that out. And there you go. Drawing tile at tile 1, x equal to 32 pixels. Okay, tile 2, tile 3, 4, 5. And with each iteration, we are multiplying each tile by 32. All right, so that's the second kind of loop in Lua. So we have so far while loop, we have for loop, and the third type of looping in Lua is called repeat until. And that's pretty obvious, very clear, very intuitive. You repeat something until some condition is met. So repeat until, okay? And let's do game countdown, for instance. Again, I apologize for my primitive way of teaching this course, but I want to make sure that this course is very beginner friendly and simply accessible by anyone who is interested in learning programming. Not only learning programming for game development, but who has learned about programming and wants to know what programming is. So that's really a very nice door to enter from. All right, so let me give you an example here. Let's have timer. Timer, of course, is a variable. So I'm initializing this variable and give it a value of 3 initially, okay? So this timer has a value of 3. So I want to repeat something until some condition is met. So I want to repeat, and just you will type the keyword repeat, that's it. And you will put your code here until that condition is met. So until the timer is less than 0, I want actually to print something. What we want to print? Well, I can say game starts in, and we'll pass here the timer. Passing in means plugging in or substituting in. That's the placeholder for the number 3. Okay? But what if that timer is to change? So as we have a game countdown, means that the timer is 3. So we'll start the countdown. 3, 2, 1, 0, and that's it. We'll stop the loop after that. So timer here, exactly the same idea that we have done here before, except that was increment, here is going to be decrement. So timer is equal to timer minus 1. So until the timer hits below 0, we're not going to continue further. So you can expect a countdown that goes like this: 3, 2, 1, 0, and stop. Let's try that out. There you have it. Game starts in 3, 2, 1, 0. Of course, we can change that if we would do simply less than or equal to 0. So that's going to stop at 1. 3, 2, 1, and the game will start. All right, and that's simply it in Lua. We have 3 kinds of game looping in Lua: the while loop, the for loop, and repeat until. My personal favorite is repeat until. All right, now let's talk about functions. Functions in Lua, or in any programming language for that matter, is just a block of code that you can run whenever you want. All right, it's a set of instructions that are encapsulated and that has a name. This name, you define the function by giving it a name, right? Why? To call it later. When you call it later, the set of instructions inside that function is going to be executed and do whatever you want. So depending on the function and the purpose of the function that you want to create. So to define a function in Lua, you will type the keyword function, following that the name of the function. Let's say, for instance, say hello. It's just a function to say hello, to print hello to the terminal. Of course, a function can take a set of parameters. It can take one parameter or more than one. So we'll just pass the name of the person to whom you want to say hello. Then you will hit enter. So you don't need curly braces here. Okay, just hit enter. And what you want to do is you want to print. What we want to print hello and the name. Whatever the name is going to be passed to that function is. And don't forget to end that function. All right. And then down here below, I'm going to invoke that function or call that function, say hello, while passing the name that I want to pass. That's going to be in the form of string. So let's say, for instance, John Doe. Don't make a mistake and omit the double quotes. That's not going to work. It's going to throw an error to your face. So you want always to pass a string to this function. So let's go ahead and try that out. And there you go. Hello, John Doe. Let's make things a little bit more complicated. So let me do here example 1. All right, so let's say that we have a video game. We are designing a video game in the level, first level, for instance, and we want to create a function that takes the damage. Okay, so we need the player health for that matter, and we need also the damage taken. Okay, to create a function that takes a damage, we will need two things: the player health and the damage taken. So always give names that make sense to your functions, okay? And we need to pass two different parameters here. Two different parameters, two different inputs, that's the same thing. You need to enter those inputs to your function so your function works properly. All right, so we want player health, that's the first input, and the second input is going to be the damage. And we want, in this case, to return and not print, because we're going to return a value. Printing only if you want to print a string. But return always returns a value, a numerical value, for example. So return here, that's going to take the player health and deducts from it the damage taken. So this is our function. So again, down here below, you can actually invoke or call this function by passing the two different inputs, the player health and the damage. Let's say the player health is 100 and the damage taken is 20, for instance. So we would expect to have 80 as a result. But in order to show the result on the screen, we need to pass this as a string. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to assign this function to a variable, and I'm going to call it health. So now you see what we have done. We have actually assigned this function, taking the parameters or the arguments in action, and assigned all that to a variable called health. Now we can print health if we want. So we will print in a string format, and we can say here player health after attack, and I'm going to pass the health. Now let's go ahead and run that, and there you go. Player health after attack equals to 80. Now that's gonna take us to a concept of the first class functions or first class citizen functions. So in Lua, functions are first class citizens. What does that mean? That means that you can assign functions to variables like we have done here. That also means that you can pass them as arguments, or you can return them from other functions. Let me give you a few examples. So let's have a function that greets whatever the name is. Then it will print welcome to the arena. Then we'll put the name here, then ending the function. So now we have this function called greet. So take a look, we'll do exactly like we have done here. I'm going to say hello equals to the greet function. So here actually what I've done is that I have assigned this function to another variable. Okay, so greet is going to behave exactly like say hello. You want to see that? All right, say hello, and I'm going to pass a name. Let's say Jiro-san, for example. Take a look. Welcome to the arena, Jiro-san. So you see that this variable has behaved exactly like the greet function. So that's what we mean by first class citizens. So we can just have or add this comment. You can assign functions to variables, and also you can pass them as arguments, as input to different functions. All right, let's have a new function. Let's call it, for instance, that's going to execute some action. So we will need an action function. Okay, I will need an action function that takes the player himself. So that function, I'm going to call it execute action, and I need to pass here a certain action function, all right, and the player. And inside that function, I want that action function passing the player himself. Now let's create a second function, which is going to be our action function basically. So this action function can be anything: heal, attack, defend, whatever, in our RPG game, for instance. So I'm going to have a function called heal to heal the injured player. Okay, so let's say, for example, that I want to heal the target, and I'm going to print that target has been healed. So has been healed with 20 points, for example, or let's make it HP, health points. All right, so this heal function now is going to play the role as the first parameter in this execute action function. So whenever you want to invoke the execute action function, you want to pass the heal function as the first parameter, and then the player is going to be whatever the player name is going to be passed, so it doesn't matter. So let me show you that in action. So execute action here, and I'm going to pass heal, obviously, and we can say here, for instance, gem. Okay, let's try that out. Oh, there is no much room here, so let's make like that. Let's run that again. Okay, so Jim has been healed with 20 points. So you can see clearly that functions in Lua can be passed as arguments to different functions. Okay, so that's the second example that I want to give you. So that's the second example that shows how functions can be first-class citizens in Lua. Let's move on to the third and final example where you can return functions from functions. All right, so let's have one more function. This function is going to create damage. So I'm going to call it simply create damage function. And that's going to take a base number, all right? Then it's not going to print, but instead it's going to return. What's going to return? Well, it's going to return a new function. And this function will take multiplier. Not multiplayer, but multiplier. This multiplier would be multiplied by the base number. All right, so we will return the base multiplied by the multiplier. And let's end that code block. And let's end that code block. Now I can simply invoke that create damage function and passing the base. The base here is going to be 10. But that's not all, because I want to also have the multiplier, so we would return the base multiplied by the multiplier. So I'm going to assign the create damage function to a variable. This variable, I'm going to call it damage function, damage fn. If you will print only the damage fn, take a look, you will have this very weird set of numbers and letters together. So that's not what we're looking for here. What we're looking for here is a proper number, the multiplier multiplied by the base. So what we want to do, we want to take that damage function. So what we want to do, so what we actually want to do, we want to take the damage fn and pass to it 2, and then we're going to print special skill damage, for instance, and that's the end of that string. We're going to pass that here. Now if you will print, you will have here special skill damage 20, which is 10 multiplied by 2. So this very simple example shows you that you can actually return functions from functions. So we have returned that function taking the multiplier from the create damage function. All right, so those three examples, guys, show you clearly that functions in Lua can be indeed first-class citizens, which means that, again, you can assign functions to variables, you can pass them as arguments to different functions, and you can return functions from functions. Now let's talk about tables. Tables simply are like arrays in JavaScript or dictionaries in Python. But tables in Lua are a little bit different. We have two types of tables, array table and key value table. All right, let's start by the first one, which is the array table. And I'm going to give you an example on inventory here. So you want to declare a variable called inventory, and between curly braces like so, like you would do in Python, in JavaScript, and you would pass your items, not in a form of key value pairs items, but in a form of independent values. So you would do, for instance, sword, you would do shield, you would do potion, like in Golden Axe, for example, if you're familiar with that game. So you have sword, shield, and potion. And you can print whatever the value that you want to print here. And let's go ahead and print our first item in our array table, in our inventory array table. So I'm going to say here first item, and I'm going to just have my inventory table, the whole thing, and I want to pass the first item. Now Control S to save that. Let's go ahead and try that out. And there you go, first item, sword. If you want to print them all, so you can do like this, here 2, here 3, we can do here second, we can do here third. And there you go, first item, sword, shield, and potion. Also, there's another way to do that by doing the loop. We have learned the loop together. So now let me show you a different way of doing that loop. We're going to use for loop here. So I'm going to say for x or for I. I know a lot of you guys like to do for I equal to 1, but in the original algorithms or logarithmet by Al-Khwarizmi, it was the x, which means for thing. All right, so for x is equal to 1, that's going to be in the inventory array table. I want you to do the following. I want you to print item and with 2 dots here, and that's going to be the x or the iterator. We call that the iterator that's going to iterate through your table. All right, so you have like that, and we want the inventory whole array table sub x. That's another way of doing things. Just don't forget the comma here. All right, so let's try that out. And that's going to be exactly the same thing. Item 1 sword, item 2 shield, item 3 potion. But instead of printing them, you know, in a very dumb way, I can say, we simply, instead of all of those lines, just made it on one line or 2 lines. Okay. But imagine that you have more than 3 items in your table. You have 100 items. You're not going to do print for all of the 100 items, right? It doesn't make sense at all. You can use the power of looping. Okay, so that's the way to do for loop, just to iterate through your array table and print all of the items in your table. All right, so that was the first kind of table in Lua, array table. All right, so that was the first kind of table in Lua, array table, through which you can insert different values or different items in your table. The second kind of tables is called key value tables or key value pair tables. Okay, you have a key and you have a value, and they are always in pairs. So key value pairs, pair tables. All right, and again, that you will find it in Rust, you will find it in JavaScript, you will find it in C, in Python. All of programming languages have this the same concept, but with different names. Dictionaries, tables, arrays, the same thing. Okay, so let's have a table. I'm gonna call it enemy, by the way. So the enemy here is equal to, and again, we're going to open curly braces. But I'm going to put that on separate lines just for the sake of clarity. So the first keyword that I'm going to type, that's going to be the key. All right, that's the key, always on the left side of this equation. Here, this is the key, and what comes next, that's the value. So the key here is type, and the value, I'm gonna give the type of goblin. So that's our first enemy. And the health point, we can give it, for instance, 50. And damage, let's make it 10, for instance. All right, so that's the key value table for the enemy. Now you can try to print here. We would do enemy type, and I'm going to enter the name of my table, but I want to access the type. To access any of those fields or any of those properties of that table, you would simply do dot. Dot will allow you to enter the enemy table and have access to all of the properties here. And simply you would do type. You will type type. All right. And let's try that out. There you go. Enemy type goblin. What about the HP? So let's do here HP, and let's see what will happen. Let me just change that. The health points. We will have 50. But what if I would do HP like so? That's also going to give me 50. So you can have access to whatever fields or properties that you want in your table using both methods. Let's try for the damage. Let's do here damage. And the enemy, let's do here damage. And also let's try it with the other, let me just make like that. Let's do it like this. Don't forget, it should be in form of string. All right, so we'll have damage should be printed twice. And indeed. All right, so you have two different ways to print properties or fields from your key value pair table. All right, using the dot or using the square brackets and passing whatever the name of the field is inside your table. But don't forget to add those double quotes, should be in the form of string. All right. So that pretty much wraps it up for the tables in Lua. All right, let's talk about strings. Strings are text in Lua and any other programming language. Strings are used for things like game titles, level names, item pickups, stuff like that. And you can modify, cut, or combine them to create dynamic messages. Let me give you an example. Let's have a variable called game title. The game title is Super Pixel Quest. So let's say that I want to make this title all uppercase. To do that, simply I'm going to print, and I'm going to type the keyword string dot upper, and we have agreed that dot gives you access to properties or functions generally in programming. That's general concept, not unique to Lua. Then I'm going to pass the game title. So what I would do again is I would do print, take the string package. By the way, string is the package. Maybe I forgot to mention that. String here is a built-in package or library that allows you to manipulate string, letters. Things like we have none, like you want to capitalize or do all in uppercase or to do all in lowercase, or to take the first, let's say if you want to take that first one, if it was small, you want to capitalize the first letter of each word, to manipulate strings in general. All right, so that's a package. It's also called library or module, by the way. Just gives you some functions to work with strings easily. Now back to our example, we want, as we said, to take the first 5 letters only of the game title. So I'm taking the string package dot a method called sub, and I'm passing the game title again, but here I'm defining from which letter to which letter, from the letter number 1 to letter number 5. Now let's print that and take a look. We have here super 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's exactly what we wanted. Let's do 10 for instance to show you the difference. There you go. That's 5 picked and that's 10 picked. Now let's say that we want to join two strings together. All right, we want to concatenate them together. That's called concatenation. You would do simply print, and this feature, by the way, we have seen it before. Maybe you were, wondering what's that 2 dots that Amir is putting. I just wanted to leave it to explain it in the strings lesson. So let's say we have here a string that says level cleared. Now I want to concatenate the next set of strings. So I would do here 2 dots like that. And I would say here cavern of doom. Okay, so this is just to join 2 different strings together. Let's take a look. There you go. And to show you more about that concatenation or joining, let's have found item variable. Found item here is a sword or a golden sword. So we have a variable called found item, which is a golden sword, and we can print here you found a dot dot found item dot dot. All right, that's going to concatenate or join everything together. That's found item. All right, that's going to concatenate the string and the variable, which is a string in essence. Now take a look. There you go. The same exact thing. All right, so you can see, guys, that Lua's syntax is really simple, really minimal, no complications whatsoever, and it makes you focus, or it draws your attention to focus on what you want to do, not how you want to do it. And that's a great thing about Lua. You don't need to worry too much about the syntax and the complications. Just concentrate on the ideas, the game that you want to design, starting from the idea sketched on paper to the final design of the game as a whole, and level designs. So Lua is really great in that. And the more I study in Lua, the more I discover that, oh man, what if other programming languages can take that feature from Lua? Life would be much simpler, but of course it's much more complicated than that. Tell that to Rust or to C++, for instance. All right, let me just give you the final lesson here, which is advanced bits. A little bit advanced, but still very beginner friendly. I want to show you multiple return values, for instance. So here, multiple return values. I want to get the player position on the screen. So let's have a function. I'm gonna call it get player position. And that's, of course, will have two different parameters, x and y. I'm not going to pass them here. I'm going to leave it empty. And I want to return here 100 and 200. Let's end that. Now take a look to what I will do. I have x variable and y variable. I'm going to pass get player position, and I'm gonna keep it like this. Now take a look at that. I want to invoke that function, but I want to assign that function to not one variable, but two variables. So I would do like this: x and y is equal to my function, get player position. Still no parameters inside, just that's going to return the 100 and 200 because I have, I hard coded that. And I want to print here player position, and we'll say here x is equal to concatenated with the x, and y is equal to concatenated with the y. All right, let's take a look to that. And there you go. Player position x is equal to 100, y is equal to 200. So why I left this empty? Just to return whatever numbers that I want. Let's say that's more than, let's have a different example. Let's do get enemy powers. The enemy has 5 powers, for example. So I'm going to return 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a very primitive example, but yeah, we can do here A, B, C, D, and E, and that's going to be assigned to the get enemy powers. Again, I want to just take that like this, do like that, enemy powers, and that's equal to here A, that's going to be A, B is B, and so on. Let's try that out, and you can see here enemy powers: A equal to 1, B equal to 2, C3, D4, E5. So that's really very useful, very handy whenever you want to return multiple values from your function. The second thing that I want to show you is the lambda function, or the anonymous function. We call it anonymous functions. That's exactly like lambda functions in general. In mathematics, in programming, I've explained lambda and anonymous functions in a lot of languages like Haskell, like Python, JavaScript, C, I believe, Rust as well. So the idea is very simple. It's a function that doesn't have a name, and it's stored inside a variable, and you can call it later using the variable like a normal function. So let me give you an example. Let's say here boost, that's a variable obviously, and that's equal to a function that doesn't have a name. You see what I mean? And we're going to pass x. So I'm going to declare a variable called boost, and that's equal to this anonymous function that doesn't have a name really, and we will pass x as main input or main parameter. And what that function x will do is that just going to return the x multiplied by whatever, 1.5 for instance. And we're going to end that code block. Now you can print that. You can do here, let's say, boosted damage, and you can of course pass the boost variable. That's a variable, just it looks like a variable, but in essence it's a function, and this function needs an argument, an input, and the input here should be a number and not a string. So let's do 10 for instance, and let's run that. Boosted damage 15. So what if I will change that? Let me just do like this. What if I will change that to a string, for instance? That again is going to display 15. So that's behaving much more like JavaScript. That's dynamic. It doesn't differentiate between a string and a number. So don't forget that Lua is dynamic, and it's super loose like JavaScript, I can say. Let me show you. If you would do print, let me show you that actually in Lua here. So let's say that we want to print, okay, we'll do that, print 10 as a form of string, you're going to get 10. And if you will print 10 like that, multiplied by 5, for instance, you're going to get 50. You see? Well, of course, if you will try to print 10 multiplied by foo bar, you're going to get an error. All right, so that's not super loose, fortunately. And of course, there is a method in Lua to convert a string to a number. That function is called, or that method is called toNumber. So let's say print converted number, and we'll say 500, for example. We're going to get converted number equal to 500. That really doesn't matter because you can just simply do 500 and that's going to be the same thing. So you need, in Python, you need int method to convert the string to integer, for example. So yeah, that's really, or number in JavaScript, right? So number, you would type number in JavaScript and you would pass your number here, right? That's in JavaScript, just to convert the string to a number. But you know, it really doesn't work. It's, you know, I see it's useless, to be honest. So yeah, that's how you would do anonymous function. All right, so let's give you the last bit of information in that mini crash course for Lua as a very quick introduction to what Lua is. Let's iterate through the table. So do here table iteration. Again, let's have our inventory table, but that's not going to be an array, but key value. So slot 1 is equal to sort slot 2 is equal to potion, for example. Change things a little bit. And here we'll have, let's have a map, right? Need a map. So that's my inventory. I want to iterate through that table. So I cannot say for X, for example, because I have key value pair, right? So I will need for X and Y, or to make it more clear, or to make it clearer, I would say for key and item in pairs. That's a very important function, inventory. So for key and item in pairs inventory, I want to do the following. What I want to do is that I want to print the key here concatenated with, and I would say contains, and let's just have a column here, concatenated with the item. And that by its role, it should iterate through the inventory pairs and, you know, would say key slot 1 contains sword, key slot 2 contains potion, key slot 3 contains map. All right, so let's go ahead and try that out. Let me just exit. Oops, let's do it like that. And there you go. Slot 1 contains sword, map, and potion. All right, so it has iterated through and, you know, displayed not in a very clear way why it did that actually. Slot 2 first, slot 3 second, and slot 1 first. But if we'll print that again, you will find that the order has changed, but still loyal to the iteration concept. Slot 3 is indeed a map, and slot 2 or slot 1 contains the sword, and slot 2 contains the potion. All right, if we'll display that again, you'll find 1, 2, 3. Every time the order will change, so it has finished 3 1 2, then 1 2 3. Next, that's going to be 1 3 2. And the reason for that is that in Lua tables are unordered by default. So when we use the for in pairs here, that loop, that means that Lua does not guarantee the order you get when looping through a table. As you can see here, slot 3 2 1, 1 3 2. And the reason for that actually is that Lua tables are hash tables internally, like a dictionary in Python. They are not arrays with strict orders. So let me just add this comment. In Lua, tables are unordered by default because they are hash tables. We're going to have the same exact example. We're going to have that image or so. Let me just do like that. I'm gonna copy. I'm gonna paste that in. And let's have this like this like this, and that like this. So as I want to iterate through 3 items in my table, I will say for I is equal to 1 2 3. I want to, now that's going to be new to you, so this keyword here, local, that's used to declare local variables that are only accessible within the scope they are defined in. So that's like exactly what we're doing here, only inside that for loop. Or if you're going to use it in a function, that's going to be only in that function, or whatever the block of code that you're going to write that local variable in. So these variables are not visible outside that scope. All right, that's very important to memorize. Right, so back to our example. I want to have local, and that variable, I'm going to call it key. And I'm going to have here slot and whatever the number of that iterator is. So that's going to be I. And I'm going to print here key, whatever the key is, contains exactly the same like we have done above. And we'll take the inventory table and passing the sub key. That should do things in order, should put things in order. Let's take a look. There you go. Slot 1 contains, that's really, let's have some space here, right? All right, slot 1 contains sword, slot 2 contains potion, slot 3 contains map. All right, this way here, this method is more organized. Alright guys, so that's it for this mini crash course on Lua. I hope you enjoyed it and got a quick intro to Lua's basics. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more tutorials and cool content like this. And if you liked the course, leave a thumbs up and drop any questions or thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from all of you guys. Also, if you want me to create a full course on Lua with more details, but that's not going to be geared towards beginners, but more towards intermediate to upper intermediate programmers. If you want me to create a full course on Lua programming language, please let me know in the comment section below. Till the next time, please take care, and I will see you in the next video. Till then, stay safe and be well. I will see you later, guys.